Greetings and welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube and you want to learn more about what we do here, you can head over to officehours.global. You'll see a schedule of our events for the week. Now, our first hour is typically we're answering your questions on media and virtual events. Our second hour is something that we want to spend a little bit more time on. And today we'll be talking about Canva and all that you need to know to get started on the platform. And for our producers, it's a great time for you to submit your questions for our panel to answer them during the first hour. And you know what, Bill? Let's get this party started.
Absolutely. Our first question this morning comes in from Chris Widener at Lafayette, Indiana. And Chris asks, my Panasonic UX90 has been my workhorse for the last few years, but now the Panasonic HC X2 4K camcorder with HDMI, SDI, and Ethernet is out, and I'm debating on upgrading. Thoughts on these two for live production mixed with some documentary work?
Courtney?
It looks like a nice camera. I've been a little camera shy of Panasonic since I owned an HMC or an HC150 years ago, and it has an integral lens to it. It's built in as part of the camera itself, and I had a problem with mine where it got bumped or something and the back focus went out, and so I had to take it into, and there's no way to adjust it on that camera. So I took it into Panasonic to see if they could reset it, and it has plastic gears and things that drive the lens inside, and they said no, the only way they could do it is replace the entire optical block, which included the sensor, and at that time, which was it was CCD, so it included a prism, the sensor, and the lens itself, which amounted to a cost of repair of more than the camera cost. So I haven't had a good experience with Panasonic and their reliability. It looks like a very nice camera, and maybe Guy can speak on its features and capabilities.
Go ahead, Guy.
Yeah, depending on what you want to do, if the workhorse has been that former model, the new features, you get the 20x. So if zoom's important to you, I mean, that's one of the nice things about these all-in-one, camcorder type cameras where you've got the integral lens, like Courtney was saying, where everything's built in. It just comes down to, does it have XLR? Does it have ND? Does it have SDI, HDMI, those connections? And this one looks like one of the new features is that it can do RTMP streaming out. I've owned the CX350, which is also a 1-inch sensor camera in that family. And so it has that same basic sensor and look with the 20x zoom, but the difference with the CX350 is that it does have a native full NDI out. So if you want to match cameras, like the UE150 PTZ camera matches perfectly with the 350 because it is the same sensor. So I'd be looking at that camera, but I'd also be doing my homework on JVC, Sony, Canon in that same $3,500 price point or under, or even over, depending on what you want to do and where you want to future-proof this thing. Does it actually do 4K out of the SDI? Because some of these, they'll say that they're a 4K camera, but does it do them out the ports? And then you also got to be looking at the recording factor. Does it record natively in the resolution 422 that you want? Because some of them will record like a dumbed down 420, and you need something like an Atomos Shogun or something to pick it up. So lots of things to figure out there, but I still love this form factor of these cameras, especially for turning them into a wireless camera. So on a live gig, I still keep this one around just because it's nice to have autofocus. I can hand this off on a monopod with a Teradek on top, and we pick up great shots all the time with this camera.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, so I have to admit I've owned some Panasonic cameras as well, and haven't been the best experience for me. So as far as using them, and a lot of it has to just do with the menus and how quickly can I make adjustments. So I think that those are the kind of the challenges. I think that if I was leaning towards a new camera, I think the two leaders in cameras right now, in my opinion, is Sony and Blackmagic. So Blackmagic giving you a better especially if we're planning to do live, being able to tie the shading and everything else back into the switcher is not a minor thing. It's really a workflow. From a workflow perspective, it's really hard. If you're not going to use something, you need to be able to know how you're going to shade your cameras. And so being able to do that relatively seamlessly is something you should always keep in mind if you're planning to use them for live. I think that the Sony Color Science is probably a little bit better than Blackmagic, and some of the full frame, the new FX6 is a pretty impressive camera. I've had a chance to put my hands on it, and it's pretty cool. So I would take a look at the FX series in that price range. as well as we use a lot of, for the larger events that I work on, we use a lot of Venices. And so the Sony approach to that and some of the full frame sensors are pretty great. The full frame sensor is very challenging in a live environment. So that's the other thing to think about is Super 35 is probably the direction you want to think about there. But if you really want great documentary interviews, the FX6 is a pretty impressive camera.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next on our list, and Doug asks, would Amazon Light Sale be a useful entry point into learning Amazon Web Services without the risk of running up a bill you can't pay?
Go ahead, John.
It's not really going to avoid running up a bill you can't pay. Budgeting is going to be your friend for that, but it's definitely going to get you there. It's going to set up all the core services that if you don't understand how everything's going to interact, needing DHCP, DNS, public IP address, all that kind of stuff that you can do ad hoc, this is just going to roll it all into one nice little product for you. But again, budgeting is going to be your friend if you don't want to run over.
Next question.
Liberty White in Atlanta, Georgia. How do you approach captioning your long form videos? What tools or services do you use?
Jason.
I've used a fair number over the years, but my favorite is simonsaysai.com. I find it to be simply the best.
And you just upload the video or
it's a plugin that goes into Final Cut. And what I like specifically about that one is it tends to be very good at figuring out the two different, let's say you're having a back and forth conversation with voices. It will actually separate the people, which is just very, very handy.
Yes, agreed. John?
I've used rev.com as well as Microsoft Stream. If you upload the video there, you can download the caption file afterwards and then print it to the CC file.
Cool. Guy?
Yeah, we use SpeechPad, and SpeechPad lets you direct either a YouTube URL, so you can upload a video there, or you can upload the whole video. Then there's real people on the other side, and depending on the turnaround time, you're going to get charged about $1 a minute. So when you say long form, I mean, it just depends on how much you want to pay, because some of these can be pretty crucial for a lot of the videos that we do. We want to SEO them, so we take that and we put we download the SRT file. So you can take that and you can upload it with the timestamps to YouTube, and now it'll fall in line precisely. So when it asks for what caption you want to use, you don't just say AI generated English. You say my selected file, you put it in there and it's timestamped and it's perfect. And the nice thing about that is if the human did a good job of transcribing it, a lot of the little acronyms and things that we use like XLR, SDI, they're perfectly in there. So I like these guys at SpeechPad. I've been using them for years, and I just went and looked through all my old archives. Even if they make a mistake, you can go in there and edit the caption, and then when you upload it to YouTube, it's perfect. And then you can download it and you can put it in, like we put it in Wistia as well, and that's how we embed the rich snippet for Google.
Nice. Bill?
I use Simon Says as well, and it's nice because it's a workflow extension inside Final Cut. So literally from the timeline, you can tell it to send that audio file, which is basically what it's using, up to Simon Says. It will go through the audio. It will translate it into text. It will send you on their site. It will post for you to download a caption file that you can instantly bring in via XML into Final Cut. And at that point, you can open up all the little snippets that are timed to the actual read and edit them. And I would suggest that all of these systems have to be editable, because even the best automatic translator will get you 99%, which means that potentially 1 word out of 100 will be wrong. And so for a long thing like that, without human eyes on it, you're always going to be unsatisfied with what the result is. A human being has to check through it and make sure that the idioms are all translated correctly and everything else. I like it just because I stay in the program all the time, and it's just kind of an automated system behind there before I post the video out.
That's a good point about the human factor. Alex?
Yeah, it depends. So I do a lot of captioning, and a couple of things that we look at is, so for mass, like I have to do a lot of captioning. I need it all to come back correctly. I need to do it in possibly a couple of different languages. We use a service in LA called Production Transcripts. And we can just send them a bunch of stuff and come back. It'll come back in the next day or two, and it'll oftentimes in the same day if we pay for the rush charge. And then those will be perfectly accurate with time code, and they will generally be perfect, but they are much more expensive than other solutions, but they make it work. In the next step down from that is Rev. And Rev has a lot of other metadata tools and so on and so forth that we use to process, as well as having people caption it. But it is captionable, and it has more language options actually than production transcripts at a relatively low price. For most of the stuff that we do, though, we do use SimonSays.ai. And the reason that we use that is because it's really inexpensive. And one of the things that we want to do is be able to just throw it in there and get all the timing right. And then, as Bill said, we go through and we clean it up. I would say it's more like 85, 90% accurate. So that's about what we get out of it. But it's close enough that somebody can now go through it. And the reason we stopped doing it in other ways is because there was so much jargon, as Guy was talking about, that we needed to go through and look at it anyway, especially when we're doing multiple languages. So sometimes, and what we do, Simon Says, is the first thing we do almost every time so that the client can at least see the script. Like we don't want to pay, we used to pay production transcripts to do everything so that we could do the paper edit against it. Now we use Simon Says for that because it's close enough. They get the idea what they were saying. They remember what that is. And they can say, oh, I want that section. I want this section. I want this section. And so those things, so Simon Says is usually done in half an hour for not very much money. So we just insert it very quickly into the system. And then again, the timing is perfect. The words may not be, but it's much easier to fix the words than the timing from a labor perspective.
Nice. And thank you for those who might have answered yesterday, because I stepped away. I tried to time the answers yesterday and I stepped away. When I came back, I'm like, oh, they just answered my question. But coming in from the comments here, Mickey says, Lyuna, I think, SD, and he has a link there. He said they can deliver captions, subtitles in the SRT that you can embed into your NLE, your nonlinear editor file. And Jeffrey, to wrap it up.
So there are, you can use a lot of the editors now, like for instance, Adobe Premiere Pro, have the ability to do captioning inside. And the best part about that is because you can then burn in captions at certain points in the videos. So you don't have the captioning service there. But a little trick is if you have a couple different YouTube channels or just one single YouTube channel, upload that to YouTube, get those captions, pull it down, do all the corrections, delete that file, and then put it into something into your other channels, and then send it out that way, or just make it go public from there. That way you can do a lot of it, and that's absolutely free to do if you've got the time and effort. But of course, if you need money, a lot of all those other options are great options.
I like that hack. That's why we come to office hours, to learn these behind the scenes secrets. Next question.
Next one comes from Ike Potter in Hanover, Germany. And Ike says, when an HDMI splitter, a passive splitter, is used, does it mean that the GPU has to do double work, or is it all done by the splitter?
Go ahead, Jason.
No, the splitter does everything.
And Peter.
Yep, I was going to say with Jason's matter of fact, as far as the Mac is concerned, the display device is the splitter. It doesn't see what's beyond the splitter.
And Courtney.
That's right. If you're hooking it up to the HDMI output, your splitter, it will not have any effect on the GPU or the CPU. If you're talking about something like this, which is the pluggable screen extender, which has a USB plug, either USB-A, USB-C, or Thunderbolt on it, and gives you two additional video ports, then you're putting some overhead on your computer because it's generating those extra displays by the CPU driver. Usually it's the CPU driver for pluggable that generates those extra display spaces. And then you can run different information on the two video outputs than is what's on your main screen. So then it does impact your GPU or your CPU or both.
Next question.
Tony Mobley in Newton, Georgia says, I have the AT&T Fiber 1000 service. They have been offering additional security for $7 a month. Is this something the panel would recommend?
Go ahead, John.
If you are needing a VPN solution, it may be a good solution that kind of ties in. That's going to be a low barrier of entry as far as setup goes. Other than that, the base security features aren't really being extended here. It's more of some services on top of it, as well as some visibility into your network.
And Alex?
It's just another way to charge you a little bit more money. Like there's almost no security extra that you're getting there. They're just adding. It's just another way to get $7 more a month out of you.
Next question.
Ike Potter, Hanover, is back. For output, one laptop signal via HDMI to two monitors. Better to use a splitter or a monitor with HDMI through going to a second monitor?
Go ahead, Jason.
That depends on if you need to extend your display or not. If you need two separate outputs, then you don't have a choice. You can't put a splitter in there. And if you don't, then it's probably best to simply split it.
Bill?
Yeah, I've had better luck with a powered one. I have a little trip-light HDMI splitter that has a little wall wart, and it takes in probably 12 volts or 7.5 volts or something. It just gives you, you're making sure that you're not getting signal loss when splitting that HDMI across two buses. So that's the way I handle it.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Well, it depends on the purpose of the two monitors you want to put out there. If you want them to have the same information that's on your LCD screen in your laptop, then a passive splitter will do the trick. But what's the point of adding two monitors with the same thing on it unless they're in different rooms or something like that? But if you want to expand your display space, you'll need something like the pluggable or a device that will act as an extended monitor so that you can put different information than is on your laptop screen on the external monitor. So in that case, you will be using your GPU and be able to separate it as an extended monitor rather than, or extend your desktop onto that monitor, give you a wider display space. So that would be the best way, is to use a device like the pluggable, like I showed you earlier, to extend your graphic space, or the computer itself. If you just plug one monitor into it, it will act as extended. But if it has an HDMI out, excuse me, or a Thunderbolt out or a display port out, then it will serve as a second monitor, and then you can get the things like the pluggable to double that, to give you two monitors out, which are different than your main display.
And Peter.
The only thing I would watch out for is that technique where you can actually have a daisy chain two monitors together, which I think is one of the options he's referring to. Doesn't work consistently on a Mac.
Next
works
question.
Fine.
Oh, sorry.
Works fine on Windows, but not on a Mac.
Next question.
Next one from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia, back again with, has anyone tested updated Shoot Pro app tint feature? Looking to explore it later today.
Go ahead, Guy.
Sure, we could do it live real quick. My hand might be a little shaky trying to do this with one hand and mouse in the other. But basically on the left side, you can see that you have all these controls. There's focus, ISO, and the one that he's looking for is tint. And then you can slide this up and down. You can see that I can go a little more green or a little more magenta. And so that's the extent of it. There's also white balance, light. So you can see that you can make it. Oh, I did not know that. That's the light, the flashlight. So you could turn the intensity on to that. That's something new I just learned. So if you want to play with this more in after hours, Tony, let me know, and I'll fire mine up if you need any help.
Next question.
Next one comes from Alexander Knight in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. I now have an ATEM Mini Extreme ISO. I've set the system frame rate to 29.97. The multi-view out also sends 29.97, but my monitor I have does not accept it. Was planning to replace it soon, but is there a way around this?
Go ahead, Jason.
I mean, sure, a decimator will do it. A lot of monitors, just consumer grade monitors, won't do drop frame. It's not in their purview as part of the handshake. So you just need to standardize it to a 30p, a 60p. You get the idea.
And Alex?
Yeah, you can also do that in your, just in the ATEM. You could just switch your project to 1080p 30 and it should work at that point.
And Courtney?
You might try setting the output of the ATEM to 1080i, because a lot of monitors, if they're older monitors, will not accept 1080p 60 or 1080p 30 even. So try and set it to 2997 1080i and see if your monitor will accept it.
I don't think that the ATEM,
the Extreme will.
I don't think
the regular ATEMs will, I think.
Yeah, I have a yeah, I don't see an option there for that. So I have they're all progressive options.
Okay, so I stand corrected.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's back in again. This time, Douglas says, has anyone ever utilized software-defined networking and or mesh VPN products like Zero Tier? And he's got a link there, or Tailscale, got another link. What use cases could you see for either of them in our industry?
Go ahead, John.
This is a great way to have multiple devices connected in different networks that can talk to each other. You're going to have granular control of who can talk to who. It's just a simpler way to do essentially a VPN. It's just the next gen version of that. Definitely a use case for within the industry, especially if you're leveraging like 5G networks or any sort of mesh network and you need all of your devices to talk to each other. But ideally you just own everything in between.
And Guy?
Yeah, to be careful using those two in particular. One of those two was caught with a little snitch, being able to see that there were some Eastern Bloc countries that were intercepting some of that information. So one of the folks on our team found that. So if you're getting a VPN for free, you may be the product. So just be super careful. A use case for us is we use it with our Stream Decks to attach to an instance up in AWS. We switched over to Cloudflare and we pay. So I would rather see you guys pay. So don't just use free stuff with your private information.
That line about you are the product is a really good point there. Next question.
Alexander Knight in Vancouver, British Columbia. Can the panel confirm that this is the correct formula for calculating audio sync delay? Frame offset divided by frames per second multiplied by 1,000.
Go ahead, Alex.
I can't do that math in my head, but I can tell you that we generally think of it 30 frames a second. It's 33 milliseconds per frame. So I think it's exactly. It's only it's multiplied. I think it's divided by 1,000. But anyway, yeah. So it's 33 milliseconds per typically is how we kind of refer to 30 frames a second. It's just 1,000 divided by the number of frames per second that you're working inside of. So I think it was a slightly different way of approaching that, but yeah, 1,000 milliseconds is in a second, and then you just divide it by the number of frames, and then you know how many frames you're off.
And then Alex, in the comments, Mickey McAchore has the formula there, so if you want to check it out there.
I think they all get back to that. I mean, so
Right.
it's at 30 frames a second, it's 30. It's simpler when you do 25. In 25 frames a second because that's evenly divisible. So
Right.
it's 40 milliseconds a frame. So it depends on what your frame rate is.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next, and he says, if I were using a UPerfect 17-inch 4K monitor, and he's got the link there to it, on a 14-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Max, would I get full graphics performance on the UPerfect monitor?
That's a great question, Douglas. And Alex is coming in to answer that.
You would get as much as it can do. Like as much as the monitor can do. Definitely the MacBook Pro is going to be capable of driving a 4K monitor. So whatever that monitor is capable of doing, the MacBook Pro should be able to deliver that.
And Jeffrey?
If you're using the USB-C, yeah, definitely you'll be able to do what, because I've used 4K monitors, I've used 4K touchscreen monitors on M1 Max, not the M1 Max Mac, but the regular ones, they can handle that just fine. If you use a dock to HDMI to monitor, that might downscale it. So avoid that, which you just basically plug in USB to USB-C or USB-C to USB-C. You got power, you got monitor, you're good to go.
Next question.
Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. Small Rig has a product coming out to mount air tags to camera cages. Any other contenders with similar products, specifically something that would screw down to the equipment?
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, we're using we're using a lot of these right now. So we bought, I think we inserted like 10 or 20 of these into our cases, and it's kind of magical. You're like, where are our cases? We were shipping cases around the United States, and we we're like, I wonder where the case is. And we just go to my iPhone and figure out where the cases are. Oh, they're in Indiana right now. So they're really, really great. The thing you want to look for is it's great that you can put them in the camera cages. I think that's going to be useful, and I think that we're going to see a lot of people putting them everywhere. I mean, once we did it once, we were like, oh, every case has to have one of these. And so the key is to think about where you can put it that would be hard to find, because the first thing someone's going to do right now, not a lot of people think about AirTags, but they are starting to think about them. Lufthansa just announced that you're not allowed to ship anything with with AirTags because they don't like being embarrassed when they don't know where your luggage is and you do. So that caused, in very German style, they got upset and just said, well, we're not going to let you use any of them. So that just came out over the weekend, I think, or last week, that they made this announcement that you can't use AirTags with your luggage for Lufthansa. But, Lufthansa's trying to keep up with Aeroflat, in customer service. We're not happy until you're not happy. And so anyway, it's a German-Russian rivalry there. And so anyway, so I think that you want to think about where you can hide your AirTag. So I think that the next generation of cases and so on and so forth will have places that you can insert these that are hard to think about or hard to find and also hard to get to, so that it makes it a little bit harder to do it. But I think that we've been looking for this kind of thing for a decade. Like, how can we just put inexpensive trackers into all of our hardware? And this has turned out to be really magical, when it comes to it, because you don't need GPS. All you need is people with iPhones somewhere nearby at some point in time, and where everything is.
Bill?
Not to go too far off topic, but if somebody has a hint on a wallet that holds an AirTag well without those CR2032 batteries and then make them thick, and it's really hard to get something in a wallet, and I would love that. So if anybody has solutions, ping me. Yes.
You have the wallet in the phone. Cosmic sent me this. The wallet, the wallet comes off. So if you need a little bit more space, and then this just pops onto another thing on your car.
And who is that? Because
Peak Design.
Peak Design.
Thank you to Cosmic.
So you could put an AirTag in there.
Put the little things in here. And if you have too many cards for this, then you have too many cards.
Wow. Okay. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So you can also go up on Thingiverse if you know somebody that does some 3D printing. You could get some cases. There's tons of them that don't even look like AirTag places. And of course, you can also design your own, kind of put a battery in with the AirTag. So it's all in one case, and then it's completely hidden for use.
And Nigel?
Actually, it was more of a question for Nigel, which is, can they tell that the AirTags are in the case? So if you put one in, do they radiate something they could check and theoretically not put your bag on the plane?
Yeah. So phones are designed, the iPhones are designed to tell you that there are tags nearby so that you can't be tracked. So if you get an iPhone, you can see that there are it'll warn you that there's other AirTags. I don't know how they specifically look for those, but and I don't know whether they're going, that seems like a really labor intensive way to figure out whether there's AirTags. I don't know if they're going to check all of them. But again, Lufthansa is an airline that I've flown it a couple times, and it's an airline that randomly applies draconian rules without warning. So it's I do almost everything unless there's no other option. I will not fly Lufthansa. So it's just a horrible experience. And so anyway, so I think that they're going to probably just randomly grab people's bags that have them in it and tell them they can't do it. And maybe after they've already landed in Frankfurt. Not that I'm bitter. So,
Courtney?
And I might remind you, if you're going to find some way to hide these AirTags in your luggage or in your cases, don't put them behind a battery because it will block the signal. It uses low power Bluetooth to communicate with phones in order to report its position back. So don't put it inside a metal case, because then it won't be able to get out. And so put it inside, cloth cases or plastic, polyethylene, like the Pelican cases are fine because it can get through that. But stay away from the metal mesh or metal containers because it won't be able to speak to the world.
And then just pulling in a couple comments here. Jack Cannon says, I definitely love to put AirTags in the car and on all of our keys. Jonas Dottel said, and it jumped, airlines are starting to not allow AirTags in the plane. So, and just super quick, just pausing for those, I've not used an AirTag yet. I know it's really useful. Can anyone just quickly break down how you use it?
Yeah,
or get it set up, I should say.
The AirTag is super easy to use. You basically you buy them from Apple. They're $25 each, I think, something like that. You take them out, and there's a little tag, and you pull it, which activates the battery. It's just something between the battery, so you pull it out, and you hold it next to your phone if you have a newer iPhone. Newer OS anyway. and it'll just say, I see an AirTag, and then you name it. You can name it, and if you order them, you can get little designs for them and everything else, but you can give them each their own pictures so that you know what they are when you're looking at them on a map. And so, and then they're done, and now anytime, what they do though, they aren't using GPS, they're using the GPS of every iOS app, anything that's connected to the internet and is on iOS, they're triangulating their position based on that. And so, so basically, if they get near an iPhone, they can radio back that says, this is where I'm at. And that makes them much more efficient. They last for a very long time. I got ones for all the keys, my backpacks, all the stuff that I just put these in everywhere. For the Pelican cases, we pull down the padding and we tape them to the roof of those and put them back up again. But in different places and sometimes on the bottom and the side, it would take a lot of work to try to find them, all of them right. In all the cases, but they're really efficient, and I just keep buying and putting on more and more things. And yes, Lufthansa, Jonas would be more sensitive to the fact that one of the major airlines, that basically the United of Germany, has said that they won't let them. No one else has done that, and I think that the backlash in the United States for American Airlines to do that would be pretty intense. So we'll see what happens.
And Peter?
I'll just answer Nigel's question. They are radio transmitters, and they transmit on 3 different frequencies. It wouldn't be hard in a luggage system to detect that some bag had an AirTag in it. It would not be a problem. I could just see that going through the Denver airport. But as Alex pointed out, I don't think an American Airlines, or in this case United for Denver, would ever deign to do that.
People love their AirTags too much right now. They've gotten too popular too fast, and it's going to be very hard to pull back in the US.
And Bill?
And they don't broadcast continuously. What they do is if you ping them, they will tell you where they are. But the other thing that Apple built into them to keep them from being a stalker tool is that if you have an iPhone and an AirTag that is not registered to you follows where you go, it will ping you as the person who is being sort of tracked and tell you somebody is monitoring you that's not in your network. So they don't broadcast continuously to the world. They only turn on when you ping them, unless you're in that one circumstance, the kind of the anti-stalker circumstance. And they've tried to do the best they can to deal with that.
And Nigel?
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know whether this is common knowledge, but you can only have one AirTag for one phone. So if you have, my wife and I share luggage, if I take the AirTag, which is connected to her phone with me, I can't view it. So we've been very careful to use the labeling system to name them, so it's really clear which AirTag is in which bag.
And just to be clear, you can have as many AirTags as you want, but they all have to attach to just one phone. But you can have, I have 20 or 30.
Yeah, I mean, you can't have 2 phones attaching to one AirTag.
Right.
Copy that. So one device can have the 25 AirTags or the 10 AirTags. Got it. Because I was like, that would not be very wise, Apple. But thanks for correcting that. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Douglas Carmichael. It says, in 2020, the FCC gave telcos supporting Zoom a rules waiver to keep the U.S. connected, quote, unquote. Given the power of Zoom ISO OSC, could a network of studios using liminal tech, cable access 2.0, foster scalable conversations in today's media landscape?
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yes. But I think that pledge that you're talking about, which was Keep America Connected, was this pledge that the FCC put out. It basically was aimed at keeping lower-income families connected and not terminating them if they can't pay their fees. And it also, they had to sign this pledge to open up Wi-Fi hotspots to any Americans who need them so that you didn't have to be a subscriber to, let's say, Verizon to take advantage of their public Wi-Fi hotspots. They also accelerated the repacking of the frequencies that were used by digital television so that they could open up more bandwidth to the common carriers, the telephone companies, for broadband use. And so that stuck. So that has continued to give them more broadband space. So it's just how the carriers utilize that, and it doesn't prohibit them. That expired. That pledge, by the way, expired in July 1st in 2020. So they're no longer held to it, but they're now charging for it for expanding that space. So yes, you can expand because more bandwidth is available, but B, you will pay for it.
And Alex?
To get to the second half of the question, I do think that there's a huge opportunity for studios to basically build integrated studios and that are completely tied together. So they can be at people's homes. That's what we're doing here. But they could also be multiple studios that are all tied together completely with information, audio, video. So if you look at what we saw with EasyCast on Friday, along with the Zoom ISO and those other solutions. But I think that EasyCast probably leans more towards this of building dedicated 24/7 connections between pre-built studios that are able to tie together to build a unified show that shares comms and lighting and all the other things. That's coming. And I think that one of the things that's going to make it possible are things like EasyCast or what it sits on top of. I want to say EasyCast is going to be the first step of that in Zoom ISO. But if you look at both Zoom ISO and EasyCast, they sit on top of the Zoom SDK. So people will build, I predict, people will build dedicated solutions for studios to tie together that are going to write on the Zoom SDK, not necessarily. They'll start with using EasyCast, and I think that a lot of people will always use EasyCast because it's a great way to just turn it on and make it go. But people who want to build dedicated ones are going to build their own infrastructure, sitting basically on top of that ties all of those together. So I think that it's a pretty exciting time to be doing what we're doing.
Next question.
Next question comes from Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. Last Wednesday, Conversations with Tony Mobley did YouTube and LinkedIn Live. There was some buffering with LinkedIn Live during the broadcast. Any suggestions?
Congratulations on that, Tony. Jeffrey?
It depends on how you're doing this. Now, first of all, if you are sending it straight to YouTube, straight to LinkedIn through one machine, then you might want to think about separating that out and doing two separate machines, one going to YouTube, one going to LinkedIn. And of course, you need to have more than enough bandwidth within your infrastructure to send out two different streams to go from there. The other way is if you're using something like a StreamYard or a Restream, you're going as best as your slowest connection. So if YouTube says you can use the world, but LinkedIn says, you can only do 720p, 2 megabits per second, you're going to be doing 720p, 2 megabits per second. There's no way around that. Other than that, it could have just been straight up, LinkedIn was having a problem that day.
And just to jump in for a second, Tony, because there was a conversation in after hours the night before. So I believe that it was going through vMix. Is that how you were, the team was pushing it out to be able to push it to LinkedIn? Because that might impact the answer.
That's correct. It was through vMix. We had, I guess, sort of a rehearsal on the night before, and we figured out the best way to do it. And not only was Conversation with Tony Mobley streamed, my guest, Eric Nathan, had his LinkedIn shared and broadcasted to his actual page as well.
Okay, go ahead, Alex.
And were you streaming RTMP directly from vMix to LinkedIn? Was that how it was set up?
Yes.
And was it from the cloud?
Yes.
So I don't think it was probably a CPU problem. And my guess is the thing to think about there is if you're doing RTMP and you're not doing an API, so the API connection to LinkedIn is what we call a server-defined encode, which is how LinkedIn started. So they started with server. They partnered with Wirecast and other folks to do an API based. And what that means is the server tells the encoder what it wants, and then it gets it back. If you're doing a raw RTMP to a service, the stalls often occur when the GOP isn't the same. GOPs or segment sizes, segment sizes for HLS, but GOPs for GOP is a group of pictures. So if your GOP settings and some of your other settings in there are not identical to what the encoder expects to accept, you'll see stalling. So as it tries to figure that out, so it doesn't have keyframes where it expects them to be. So that'd be one thing that I would look at is if you're doing RTMP to LinkedIn, you want to look at that. You want to look at its instructions because it won't necessarily be the same as YouTube. Some of them, for instance, are YouTube I think is a 60 frame GOP, but other ones might be 90 frame or other. So you might want to take a look at that.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Gordon Lake in Los Angeles, California. In doing Zoom from a phone, is it better to connect using Wi-Fi or cellular?
Go ahead, Alex.
It depends. So it depends on how much bandwidth you have. If you have all things equal, if you have the equal amount of bandwidth between the Wi-Fi and the cellular will give you a more stable connection because it's talking to the cellular tower. It's not dealing with APs. So the problem with Wi-Fi is that anything else that touches that AP while you're working, so someone driving by literally touching that AP, you'll end up with frame loss. So you just have to be careful of that. If you're in the middle of nowhere, then Wi-Fi actually works as well as Ethernet because the APs aren't renegotiating while they're trying to transfer data. But generally, I will pick cellular over Wi-Fi when I'm connecting, if possible, because the Wi-Fi is much more likely to break up. Now, if you don't have very good bandwidth on your cellular, which is less than 15 megs up, then I would probably lean towards the Wi-Fi if it was a lot faster.
And Courtney.
Yeah, Alex covered most of it. What I do is I check to see how many bars of cellular I have, and if using Wi-Fi, I only use Wi-Fi for data if I'm managing the access point. And in other words, I'm close to my access point and I'm using it, then it's great Wi-Fi. But I find that if I have my cell phone set to use HD calling, where it uses Wi-Fi for HD calling and for data connection, if it's available, we'll default to that first. And if you leave your home and you set it, and you leave that setting turned on, it'll try and connect to cellular Wi-Fi access points. I mean, not cellular, but Wi-Fi access points that are on that ISP. So as you're driving around, you're connecting to other access points from other people that have that same service as you. And those are very dicey. In that case, I turn off Wi-Fi, so it forces it to use the cellular network where you will get a much better connection.
Next question.
Next one comes to us from Alexander Knight in Vancouver, British Columbia, up in Canada. Thinking about purchasing Mix Effect Pro, does that completely replace the need for the ATEM software control app?
Go ahead, Alex.
So yes and no. It does have all the features that you need. Sometimes it's just easier for me. I will say with Mix Effect, it sometimes is a little heavy for me to do some of the things that I do very quickly in the ATEM app. And so I generally do some basic setup on the ATEM app. I will say that almost all the features, or if not all the features, and then more features are in Mix Effect. I've cut whole shows in Mix Effect, for a lot of people to watch. And so I think that you could probably get away with it. I don't know why you would, because you don't have to pay for the software from Blackmagic.
And Nigel?
I think you need both. At least I think so when I'm using the companion module. The big difference for me is I can't control the camera and I can't do the colorizing from Mix Effect. Or if you can, I've never worked out how to do it. So I always go back to the ATEM software to get my camera right.
Next question.
Our friend Cheetah in Dallas, Texas says, had an issue on a production where the ATEM Extreme ISO USB out froze. It froze up in vMix. The audio output was still fine from the ATEM. This also made the recording button flash, and then the recording stopped. Anyone seen this issue and know what could be causing it?
Alex?
The first place I'd look is whether you have a hub somewhere in the middle of that. So that looks like a fairly typical problem of having any kind of hub. So you need to make sure that the ATEM is plugged directly into the most connected version however you have your PC set up. You need to make sure it's plugging straight into that and not into something else in between.
Next question.
James Hutchinson in Dublin, Ireland, up next. When using a passive HDMI splitter, is there any degradation to the signal? For example, when splitting a signal between a confidence monitor and an ATEM input?
Go ahead, Courtney.
No, there shouldn't be, as long as it is a powered and not actually truly passive splitter. There used to be, and you could get them. China made, an HDMI splitter that had a male HDMI on one end and two female HDMI and did not take any power. It was physically just parallel connecting the cables between the two, and that halves the signal level to each of the secondary outputs. So do not use those. The active ones that have power connected to them, take the HDMI signal in, reclock it, and duplicate it and put it out on the two outputs. And since it's a digital signal in and a digital signal out, the output signal should look exactly like the input signal without any degradation.
Alex?
What Courtney said.
And Peter?
Well, the only comment I would make is the distance between the splitter and the ATEM and the splitter and the confidence monitor. If you go, I found if I go over about 30 feet from the splitter to the confidence monitor, the signal starts to degrade and the confidence monitor gets a little wonky. But that's an HDMI distance problem, not the splitter problem.
Next question.
Jonathan, looks like Mikkelson, there we go, Buenos Aires, Argentina, says, if I enter office hours quiet movie theater with an iPad Pro, will it collapse the 1080 for everyone to 720p? Wouldn't want to spoil the party.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yes, it will spoil the party. So you will get 720 if anybody jumps in with a 720p input or a request, which is what the iOS apps do currently. It will degrade everybody's high res to 720.
Next question.
David Brady in New York City. I was watching the Saturday replay and getting critical of my image. The skin tones look kind of gray. Locally, it looked okay, but on Zoom, not so much. What can I do to improve things without losing my signature ice blue background?
Go ahead, Alex.
In general, you want to correct for your skin first and then figure out how everything else is going to work after that. So the first thing for you to do is I would get something like Omniscope and run it through there. And what you're looking for is you're basically looking to get your skin right. There's a flesh line, which is actually the color of your blood. So it's like, it doesn't matter what your complexion is. You generally want to get your skin onto that line, and it's going to look pretty accurate at that point. And then how far up it goes depends on the saturation. But you basically want to get it onto that line, and then after that, start adjusting your lights to get back to where you're trying to get to.
Next question.
Next one comes from Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. Hollyland's SolidComm C1 now supports up to 8 headsets. With the new firmware, without the hub, does this change the comms conversation?
And I'm looking, there we go. Alex?
So we've used Hollyland comms. I wouldn't use them again. I've used them and we used them for a show, and it was, I mean, when you're, and I will admit, I come from using FreeSpeaks almost for every show that I use. And the shift between the two was pretty dramatic.
And Guy?
Yeah, if you're going to get them, I would say get them from a place that you can return them. So run them through your environment. We've used them on a few shows. Noah Sargent owns both pairs, the first model that came out, and he I believe said he's going to stick with the C1 after having both pairs. The nice thing about those ones is that you fold them down to talk, and then you could flip them back up to mute. But it's headset, so there's a master headset, no hub, and then you can just go from headset to the other units up to, I believe, 7 with the master, so a total of 8. And it's a pretty good value. I mean, sure, everybody wants ClearComm, and I mean, you're talking $20,000 for a similar setup that you can get for 2. So, like I said, to get them, put them in through your paces in your environment where all the RF is going on. We used them on a show recently where we didn't have any issues. So it just depends, but we were only a couple hundred feet away from each other, and it's line of sight up to 1,000 feet with those. So again, once you start, like I'm used to being at huge venues with ClearComm where we can go down halls where there's full on concrete buildings, and it's like, it's a luxury. Like good comms are amazing, but we rent them. We don't own them. So it's just the difference. Do you want to be the one having to get out your certificate of liability, run and drop stuff off, rent it? It could be a pain to get the Riedels or the ClearComms and rent them.
Yeah, and we don't rent Riedel because they're so complicated to run that you need to have somebody who actually can run them. Like you can't. I mean, all of them need somebody to run them, but Riedel really needs somebody to run them. And so we don't usually get Riedel. They are really nice. They're very clear. I will say that we don't own them either, and we rent the FreeSpeaks because they're. I used to own a couple of FreeSpeaks, and so we kind of know them well, but we put those into our systems if we're building something for somebody. But we rent them. But I'd rather rent than have something that isn't really like comms are 50% of the show at least.
And then just pulling in from the comments that Mickey co-signs, I would save my time and money there. Next question.
Next question comes from Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. He says, I'm stuck in a waiting room with the broadcast TV on, and they have lower thirds and tickers. Have they always been this bad, or do I need to see an optometrist for new glasses?
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, they've been this bad for the last probably 10 or 15 years. And I think that's because they found essentially that there was a ton of people using TVs, particularly in public spaces without the sound up or in environments that were so noisy the sound was irrelevant. So they started making the graphics in these broadcasts the dominant feature, particularly the news-ish stations, CNN, Fox. They tend to have these gigantic arrays of all sorts of information, looking to grab somebody who's walking by with information who doesn't necessarily listen to what's on the TV. Also, a lot of people in the financial institutions are very used to watching tickers and all sorts of stripes and things. So I think it's a play for those people as well. Yes, it is annoying, but it's just the way that TV has developed to try to serve and attract audiences that otherwise would not leave their TV on. You know, TV is kind of sinking in the amount of time that people spend with it. Once upon a time, I read a statistic when I was doing a lot of advertising stuff, that there was a watched TV on in the average American household more than 9 hours a day. So somebody was sitting in there. That has been diminishing. It is not down to zero, certainly, but it's having a tough time competing with all the other outlets. And I think this over character generating of things is a way to try to combat that.
It's interesting that you say that, even just the point of like just the tickers, because I know StreamYard gives or a lot of folks when they are using StreamYards will have like that ticker running down, and it just sometimes I would just wonder the science behind having tickers and how that works. Is it that it's flickering so that it gets your eye to look down? I'm just throwing that inside of this conversation.
I don't think anything they do is unresearched and by an accident. They
Right.
do all sorts of research to say what causes people to look at this content and keep them there the longest possible.
Jeffrey?
Stickers are so expirable content. It's crazy for the most part. I've gotten away from tickers because you find that depending on what monitor they're watching on, it could look very de-interlaced, very choppy as it's going back and forth, especially if you're streaming something. If you lose signal for a second, all of a sudden that's just super pixelated. You can't see it anyway. As for lower thirds, I've always found lower thirds to be very clear once they've settled in. If there's a lot of movement happening around those lower thirds, then once again, that could make it look very pixelated and hard to read at that point. But if you get a nice solid lower third in and hold it there for a couple seconds, it should clear up and then go away from there. But other than that, basically anything that has an alpha channel to it is how I usually put in my graphics.
Courtney?
Well, if you're looking at it in a waiting room, what a lot of these things are digital signage devices. Bright Sign is one that makes some. That take basically a broadcast channel that they either receive over the air or over the internet and put that in a window and put their own local display information on the monitors and then distribute that throughout a facility. So they may be going RF out to distribute that because it's a lot easier to run RF out. And they're probably running it at 720p. So in that case, the lower thirds and everything are being generated locally but distributed over RF, and that's why they can look down, mousy or bad in resolution and without sharp edges on the characters because they're going out at 720p and because they have to match older monitors that are put in different rooms.
Alex?
Average view time based on visual reference. That is why they're doing it. So they keep you looking at the screen. When Bill was talking about 9 hours, people weren't watching it for 9 hours. They're just playing it in the background. So they're listening to CNBC or they're listening to conversations and they're listening to things and they might go over and look at it. What they want you to do is look at it. They want you to look at the thing. And so by creating those things, it tends to keep you there a much longer time So you'll sit there and watch it longer because you're waiting for some information. That's the big thing, is having you feel like by rotating data, you feel like if you wait just a little bit longer, your thing will come up, and that's going to keep you there. As far as tickers go, super powerful for comments. So especially, love this. This is great. Like if you're doing these for the shows, inside of another version of, inside of Commenda, we have systems that let you just kind of push things to a ticker, and it just generates a ticker graphic, and you just can throw things to it, and it's just constantly adding those to the top, and people love it. So there you go.
Thanks for that. Again, back to the science aspect of it, because when the comments pop up, but those like running, remember like the telethons and they have the numbers scrolling, just again, thinking about the why.
Think of that as the ticker across the bottom. Think of it as an auctioneer. And they're throwing that across the bottom to kind of keep you going.
And Nigel.
Yeah, most people have made the points I was going to make. There's a lot of people using TVs and putting on stuff, particularly in waiting rooms and medical places, on afterwards, which are very low quality. I would remind everybody that if you spend a lot of money on your LG OLED and you leave the ticker on all the time, it'll stay on forever.
Yes.
Don't do that.
Next question.
Paul Wallace, Austin, Texas. What is Alex's popcorn recipe? We want to know.
We were talking about this before the show. I'll keep it quick because it was a very unpopular question, just so you know. It's like one of the more unpopular questions ever. I use a whirly pop, a copper whirly pop that you can get on Amazon. I'll put all these links in the thing. I use the Amish country mushroom popcorn kernels. I typically then top those with either Bragg premium nutritional yeast, or I use JFC's wasabi fumi furikake. So those are the things that I put on it. The key is that I use the whirly pop. I use 3 tablespoons of avocado oil, 1 teaspoon of fine salt, sea salt, and then 165 grams of the popcorn. That'll fill the pop right up to the top of the whirly pop. And you'll find that you don't really need to add anything. It'll taste really good if you dissolve the salt into the oil first. And then, and I got that from Alton Brown. So I didn't make it up. But if you put a little butter on it, you can throw the nutritional yeast and the wasabi on, or the wasabi. Don't put them both on. It's horrible. But one or the other. And it's pretty great popcorn. There you go.
Next question.
Gordon Lake has, I think, our last regular one for today. When Office Hours has a booth at a major convention, what equipment would be in said booth?
Alex?
One of the most important places is for us to charge things and store things. Like that has to be like, so if we can cover the rest of the conference, we need to put a place to put those things. So that's a very important piece of that. And then after that, I think that what we want to do is, or what I've been thinking about, is being able to throw down a table and have what we've done in the past is typically put up some truss and some lights and cameras. And usually we want to hang PTZ cameras so we don't have a lot of stuff on the ground. And so you think you want camera operators, but you don't, because you want to get it up off the ground. And so you hang PTZs. In the past, we've used BRC 1000s, but right now I'd be tempted to look at FR7s and hang those down so that we can have roundtable discussions. You want to put some monitors on the outside so that people can see what the event looks like, as opposed to just what they're there. Don't put a lot of seats in there. A lot of people use up a lot of space for seats, and it just creates a lot of clutter, and then you have to shoot through that stuff. So don't give people a lot of places to sit down. Let them sit around the studio and watch the monitors. You want to kind of push. That's why the monitors are there. It kind of pushes them out into it annoys people because it pushes them into the aisle, but it doesn't. But you don't want them actually in that area. And then of course you have a round table. You want to have directional mics. So really the SM7Bs are a great. They look good, and they're really there, or the PR40s, and each one of them has to have cough mic as well as an in-ear monitor connection, and those are the things those are the key things. And of course, then a standard, what we've used in the past, or kind of a standard Blackmagic pipeline in the background that we're cutting cutting the show with, and then encoders and enough bandwidth to actually stream from. So which is the biggest challenge usually in most of these places, is getting the bandwidth. But those would be some of that's the very high level of what we can answer in the time frame allotted.
And Jeffrey.
Yeah, the audio is probably going to be the most important thing out of everything, because you could be sitting at a table at a conference and still not hear the person that's sitting right next to you. So having something in your ear, a lot of people, they love to have the big cans on their heads so they can completely kill out the ambiance that's out there. Having a thick curtain behind you, so that kills a little bit of the audio that's coming from the conference. You want a little bit to leak through, but not too much. And then the only other thing is a good security person's, because you're going to be leaving a lot of stuff there, and you want to have somebody that's going to watch your stuff so it doesn't get stolen.
And on the dot, Jeffrey, you did that great job, everyone, on the first hour. Now we're going to make the transition into our second hour when we're going to talk about Canva. And for those of you who may have heard about Canva and or just like, what is it and how and can we possibly use it in our workflow? Canva is a visual communications. They just had their big event a few years ago, kind of like their Apple keynote, just talking about a lot of their wins and some of the new additions to their suite. But overall, if you are looking to create graphics, they started with graphics, expanded into more video and then presentations. And a lot of people who are in the marketing space, and or if you are a solopreneur or even someone who works, who has to create presentations, Canva is a great tool where they have their claim to fame is the templates that they have, so that you're able to just go in, because sometimes the hardest thing to do when you're starting to design is just getting that idea across. And with their templates that you can start, and I'll jump into sharing my screen in a moment so that we can walk through a little bit of that there. But you're able to scroll through the templates that they have for social media graphics, for presentations, for even video templates. And that has been that's been growing, especially for social media managers, marketing managers. And some of the ways that we've used it in the past is if we are, say, at a show and we've already loaded some of the graphics that we know that are going to stream out. And in this case in particular, it was a Zoom meeting. So we already have the graphics inside Canva, and that if for any reason that we need to make some edits or make some changes, that one of the community managers would just be able to go in and they having just access, because Canva it's cloud-based software. So just as long as you have access to that account. They also have a Teams one, which has also been growing. During their presentation, they shared a lot of NFL teams and a lot of brands are using Canva just for the ease of use, that you're able to have multiple people using it at one time. I do not believe that it necessarily replaces something like Adobe Photoshop, being from the old school, and that's how I learned design. But again, the ease of use in using it, the drag and drop aspect, that helps tremendously. And I would love to see in the chat anyone who is currently using Canva, and or if you're what you're looking for when it comes to Canva, because I know that Tony, you've had some questions in the past of, how you might be able to use that for your place of worship. And I also did a quick poll on LinkedIn earlier this morning, just asking, how are people using Canva? And there are 10% of the respondents use it for business presentations, 70% social media, again, as I mentioned, being one of the groups that use that very well, education materials, and then another 10%. So 70%, everybody else was 10%, those who don't use Canva. And I see in the comments here that Paul Wallace says that he uses Canva. He's subscribed to it. And then Jack Cannon also says he uses it for social media posts. So I will jump over to you, Jeffrey, and then I'll go into sharing my screen so I can just walk everyone through just some of the features and some of the ways that you can use Canva in, again, the business setting, education, and then also your marketing efforts. Jeffrey?
The two things that I do like about Canva is, especially when you're doing YouTube, they require such a specific resolution that's it's so odd resolution for the background image that you go into Canva and you can just create that's for the front page. Create that image right in Canva and bring it over. Same thing with Facebook. You need a background image for your Facebook group, your Facebook page. You go into Canva, and then they have some templates that you can bring in and go into and make your image from there, and then post it right up on Facebook. Usually doesn't take that long, basically. And then the other thing that I'm really digging is their logo maker. If you don't have a logo for your whatever you're doing, show or whatever, you can go in and kind of make a very generic logo. And I'm a big fan of making logos and then putting watermarks of the logos onto your videos, because when it comes to copyright video, it's the best way for you to dispute anybody stealing your videos is have branding stuff on there, and a watermark is a great way for that, for YouTube to see that and say, hey, yeah, that is your video.
Yes, Jeffrey, great point there with just them having pretty much all the sizes that you need necessary, whether that be your presentations for the graphics. Because sometimes if you don't necessarily have that checklist sitting somewhere on your desk, and if you are in a rush and you're like, oh, I quickly need to create this banner for Facebook, or we need to quickly put out a reel on, on Facebook, Instagram, that you can literally just go in and just type, and it's already got it sized directly for the dimensions that you need. And then that way, what Canva does well is reducing the friction for creating visual communications. And then for the backend team, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that we can get into just walking around Canva really quickly as our producers submit any questions that they have. And I see that there are a lot of folks who are using Canva already. We'll pull this one up here. All right, so this is a Canva account. I do have a paid, so there are different versions. So there's the free one, and that provides you with a lot of access to their photos and to video. And then the paid version, there are some, and I will just jump in here. Let's go into some templates, and let's say something for Instagram, just as an example of, okay, so it's already giving us, let's create a square Instagram post here. And you have the option that you can just scroll. So there's a ton of already ready-made templates that you can just go in and tweak. Let's go with this one here. And I want to customize this template. And so as you'll see here, navigating on the left-hand side are templates and these elements. So if there's for any reason that I say, oh, you know what, I'm not a fan of this here, I will typically, and as a practice, I just typically will duplicate things so that I'll always have the original idea. But let's say I don't want this here, I can go ahead and delete. And let's say I want a different style of arrow. If I type in there, it'll give me a whole bunch of options. And again, I do have the free version. I do have the paid version, which gives me access to things like, if you see those little crown icons, that tells you, if you are using the free version, that, oh, this is something that I would have to pay for. But as someone with the paid version, that I have access, so I can, let's say I just want to be a little zany with this design here, and I want to use this element, then I can use it as a part of my subscription, and I'm good to go there. And if for some reason that what Canva also does well, I know that in the past, Alex has, and many of our panelists have said how using shortcuts helps you just with your workflow. If you type anywhere on your canvas and you hit the backslash, you can pull up a lot of these features that are here on the side. So if I wanted to say, actually, you know what, I'm looking for a photo and I want to go into photos, and the photo I'm looking for is a happy face. then there it is. And I want to pull in, oh, you know what? This little girl looks super happy. And I want to pull her in here. Please do not critique the design part here. This is just drag and dropping to share and to show everyone just some ways that you can use it. So there it is. This is a ready to go Instagram post, and I can go ahead and, again, it's a template, so you can put your company name, your or even remove it, anything that you want. You know your message and your story that you want to get out, but this just helps. I can change the color of the background. Let's do that really quickly, and let's change that white. Boom. Something just. I really would not put this out, but again, just showing it here on how it looks. And for a lot of people, and what Canva has done well in the past number of years is your ability to not just static images, but creating things that are moving. Like when you hit here for animate, that gives you the option that now you can actually almost, when you export this could be a video just by making, transitions that could happen. And then if I wanted to add music, they've got a library there. Again, all the things that you want to just be mindful of. If you know that you are going to be doing a lot of content creation, I encourage you to go ahead with the pro account, because then you just don't have to, it'll save you time from, again, having to sort through what images you should and you can or can't use, so that you can just focus really on the design and the creation aspect of things. And then also, and feel free anyone to, I want to make sure that I'm also still looking at the panel to see if there are any hands raised. Sorry, one moment as I log back in there. Okay, cool. So no, not yet. All right. So, and then going back out, another feature that I'd mentioned earlier with Canva is your ability to have a team. So this here is so that anyone else who's working on our team, that they can access, like, we've got folders of different projects. So while what I shared with you before was what I am personally using or working on, that other people on the team can have access to other projects. And it just makes it really easy. So these being all folders so that we can keep things organized. And again, just the ease of use for other people. So the collaboration aspect of using Canva. I want to hop over to one more feature. Where not projects, yeah, that's what it was. Just even showing you if you are creating a presentation. So I started this and was gonna, have all these stats and whatnot here, but I do want to show, like, as an example, I did for Erica, who's been a part of our education community. She did the Green Screen Summit. So I had a presentation for them, and just as you are familiar when you're at different conferences, the use of GIFs and just making things much more engaging, that how you can just, even between files, like I can grab these 3 slides here, I can click over here and then easily add them, move things around. So again, just the ease of use when it comes to shifting elements between your projects. And coming back over here, so any questions or additional comments when it comes to, Tony, I'd be interested to hear how you are using Canva for your house of worship.
So the use case right now is that we are celebrating 40 years of ministry, and I am trying to do, we have events throughout the month of October, and I'm trying to get pictures of all the guests that are participating and doing sort of a YouTube card with the information for those guests that will be supporting the ministry throughout the month, and then culmination at the last Sunday, the 5th Sunday of October. So I try to get as much information on the YouTube graphic picture information, and then continue to share those once I've completed the document, share it with the membership and anybody else that is interested in, what we're doing.
And what have you found, like just even in using Canva? Are you the only person creating the graphics, or are there other people on the team?
Right now, that's one of my questions, how best to share it with the team. And well, there's really not, there are only really 4 of us that are working on the whole production for the service, but it's primarily me and my niece that do all of the technical things with the House of Worship. And so I want to share with her the things that I'm doing so that she can be a partner in the efforts that we're trying to do. And I have a free account and I have a paid account, and I ran into the thing that you were talking about before about having to wrestle with, I have to pay for this, and I didn't want to have to deal with that anymore, so I got the paid account. And I'm looking forward to sharing that and upping the ante in terms of how visible I want to do a Canva graphic for the House of Worship. Right now, we just have like a sort of blue M showing for the first name of the church. And so I want to really up the ante in terms of actually having a nice graphic for them to see when they go to the church's YouTube page. And so there's a lot of different things that I already know that we'll be able to utilize Canva for. And, I think $15 a month to be able to do all of the graphics that I'm able to do. Maybe it's 12, I'm not sure. But whatever the price is, I think it's a great tool for us in order to be able to utilize the graphics.
Yeah, definitely, especially for whether it's a small business, a growing house of worship, that just the access that you have, and as you said, the investment of the $15, and if you pay it annually, that it's you have some cost savings. It just will help you if you spend some of that energy on the front end and Jack Cannon actually makes a great comment here where he says it makes it super easy to abide by branding standards. Like there's a way that there's a section in Canva that says like your branding, so that you've got all your colors in there, so that anyone who does come and use the account, they can see, here's where our logo, here are typefaces. There are a number of typefaces they have there. But then if you have your own fonts that you want to upload and then use those fonts, that you can do that as well. And you said that while you have the paid account, you can create a team and invite people to the team. But then it also costs. So that's the other part of it. So as you add people to your team, there's a licensing fee for that individual. The workaround of that is if you have the paid account, of just making sure that who you're giving access to that free account, so that everyone can use it. And you can also leave notes in Canva as well. So there's so many different ways that you can still have that free account and be able to use it to create quality graphics and at least build the momentum of getting your branding elements together. Also, what they made mention of during their keynote this year was if you were a school, that they are giving that as free. So schools are able to use Canva for free. So educators, teachers, a lot of them use it for lessons planning or creating activities for students to do. So they're really highly invested in seeing people using the platform. So, Bill, you know what? It's a good time to jump into some of these questions. I see them piling up.
Absolutely. We start with Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas, who says, Liberty, have you purchased premium images and vectors?
So I have not had to specifically purchase them individually because I do have a paid account. So if anyone on the panel has, I've not had that experience of having to pay for them. I've heard people in the past, like after you pay for a couple of them, that it's like you might as well have the paid account because you have access. And the number, so the free account has about 1 million photos and graphics, and then the paid one, you get premium stock, photo, video, audio, all of that, and it's over 100 million items or assets there. So again, just that investment, it'll give you access to a lot of features. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia, we're just talking with. How do I share my paid account with team members of House of Worships?
Yes, Tony. So I shared the hack. So if you have, just to say that again, if you have a free account, just being mindful of who else can access that, giving them the username and password so that they can go in and use that, and or inviting somebody else. Oh, you know what? There's an in between there. So if you have a free account and you design a graphic, or you have a project and you're designing, you can share that with someone who would then be able to access it. So if let's say that Harshid has a free account, Tony, you have a free account, you invite Harshid to a project, then he can then edit and work on that project. Now, the only thing is you just have to track all the projects that you've added to him to, versus him being able to just access all the projects that are on your account. So that's another, in between hack. And then the other way of sharing is having an account and inviting a member, and then that member be possibly the one that you have everybody in the house of worship that needs to access those assets, so that everybody has that password and not your main password. So that's another way, that 3 ways right there that you can do that. Next question.
Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania says, would Canva be a good tool to create graphic elements intended for email distribution? For example, for a large distribution list, what might be some good candidate graphics?
Ooh, that's a great question there. So yes, Canva would be a great tool for email graphics, again, because they are optimized. If you have, depending on your team or your organization, if there's a dedicated designer that lives and eats and breathes this, yes, that, the go-to designer is always well, because they're going to create things that are original, that, connect with your brand. But Canva does have tons of templates that you can go through and customize for your liking. And then also, a lot of them are on trend because they do have content creators that are submitting different templates to the platform. Bill?
Also, don't forget that the world of the internet is awash in graphics services that do everything from photos to cartoons to whatever. And so if you subscribe to something, and Shutterstock is an example, they have video clips, they have photo clips, they also have a lot of vector graphics. So if you're looking for a particular kind of cartoon character or something like that, sometimes you don't have to do it yourself. You can look around through the web and see all sorts of licensable and some even free public domain kinds of graphics that you might find fit your mood entirely. And you should be able to bring those in, I would assume, and use those as a branding element.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, here's a question for you, because I'm not, maybe you may not be able to answer that. I'm not familiar with Canva. And does it, if you're going to create something that you're going to email out to people, a presentation, let's say, does it output a presentation format in a specific format, like PowerPoint? You could send somebody a PowerPoint presentation and there's a PowerPoint player. Does that person that's receiving it have to be a registered Canva user to view it? And do you know what type of format it sends? Is it, in HTML5? Is it that it uses for its interactivity or its animation, let's say, of animated slides or interactive elements?
Yeah, that's a good one. So there is in your presentation or whatever your project that you're working on, that when you go to share, it gives you a list of options of how you can export. And just looking at this really quickly, I can't say that I've seen that anything like an Excel, like an Excel or PowerPoint, but you can do JPEG, PNGs, PDF. You can do SVG. That is a premium service, MP4s, and a GIF. So yes, they do have different file formats, but the PowerPoint, that might just be because it's competitive, but those are the options that you have. I see your face thinking through that.
Well, most of those formats you mentioned are still image formats, so they wouldn't really allow you to do any type of interactivity unless they're in a HTML5 or some type of animated or interactive format that can play back in a browser. And that's the other question, is if you're sending these, collaboration on creation is different than distribution, I assume.
Correct. Yeah.
So if you're talking about distribution, does it just distribute these in these images that can be viewed in a browser? So could they be like an animated GIF or a interactive, some type of HTML5 interactive menu-driven thing?
I don't see anything that alludes to the fact that you could do something HTML5 wise. However, that what I have seen presentation wise is being able to, just like Keynote or just like PowerPoint, when you are presenting and you want everything animated, there is that in-browser ability, so that if I were to come into Zoom and then I share my share screen, I can share the presentation feature in Canva for those animated elements to take place. So that's as far as it goes that I'm aware of. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Alexander Knight in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Are there any examples of using Canva to create lower third graphics specifically?
I'm not sure if they have like specifically templates for lower thirds, but again, this is where, as experienced professionals in this space, that in going into Canva, what I like to say, gutting a template, so moving things around so that you can create a lower third. Because as an example, if whatever your design is, as long as you export it as a PNG, that one, you'll have that, the transparent background to create that lower third, and or it does export. And thank you, Kyle, for Kyle Hammond in the comments had mentioned that they do have the MP4 format so that you can export that way. So those are some of the ways that I think that creating the lower third that you could be able to do that. Bill?
Often lower thirds also come with a lot of the video friendly packages. So companies like Motion VFX, and there are plenty more out there, will sell you a look package that includes full screen, bumpers, and often lower thirds. So if you're looking specifically for that, you could probably lift those graphic elements, which often start with a static, but some of them have motion built into them, and maybe find a way to lift that and turn it into a GIF or something else that you could import into your Canva program.
And coming back to your question there, Alex, is just even looking at the fact that Canva is really looking to compete and, with the Adobe Premieres, though there's no competition to what you can do there, but for people that don't necessarily have those technical skill sets, that you can use a template for the lower third, maybe import the video that you want that lower third to go on so that it goes behind it in Canva, then export it out as a video. So again, it's when I look at Canva, I look at it very much so as hacking through that for someone who is a professional. And if it is that you need to do something to share with someone on the team and you don't want them to move things around, you really want it to be templated so that they just drag and drop elements. Like, again, that is where Canva thrives. So that's how also I can see that lower third being able to be used, because I just did a quick search in some of the templates and they do have some lower third elements, and you'll be surprised if you, I encourage everyone to go and even there's a trial. Canva has a trial, or just set up a free account. You will see the similarity in a lot of the TikTok videos that you watch, like the end cards that people use, because it's so quick and easy to just, they've already got the motion graphics or the animation on the text, and that you just drop your video in there and then just change some things around. So those are some of the ways that you can solve the lower third, your lower third question. Next question.
Paul Wallace. Oh, I'm sorry. No, not Morgan Price is up next. Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. How well does Canva support some of the detailed design tweaks, for example, kerning and so forth? I have always thought of it as a pick a template and publish versus being a design program.
Yes, so it does have kerning and spacing, and that's same wise, but yeah, it does have a lot of those features. Again, I would never, it does not hold a candle to Photoshop and those fine tunings. Like, while there are, and I think this is only on the pro version, where you can like knock out a background, versus in Photoshop, you pen tool it and do all of that. If I have fine detail things like that, I will still use Photoshop. However, yes, you can do a lot of those features in Canva to be able to get what you're looking for. However, what you are exchanging is the time to do that in certain areas. And Morgan, you actually brought up a really good point too. Yeah, Canva is much more than just that publishing. So people will do swag. I've got a friend who has her business. She's made T-shirts and sent out T-shirts and mugs. And so there's like just that much more that you can do. It's not just the digital elements of Canva, but also printing elements as well. Again, they are really becoming a juggernaut in that regards. Next question.
Next question comes up from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. And he says, how does the video star, he has in quotes, and other Canva video options rank with other video tools for Facebook, YouTube, and so forth in terms of content creation?
So, Paul, if I'm reading your question correctly, what I think you're trying to say is just, if I were to use, or if you were to use something like Premiere or Final Cut, and using those tools for Facebook. And if I'm understanding that correctly, feel free to jump in the comments to correct me. But yeah, Canva works well there. Again, what you don't get are the things like being able to, if you export a video file in Premiere, and being able to use all these different codecs and the fine tuning that comes in there, the color grading, you're not necessarily going to get that. You'll get some filters. There are a number of filters that you can fine tune there, but then it's also having your mind to adapt to, okay, how do you move some of these features around to get the look that you're going for. So again, ease of use, but the time that it may take you to get that just right look and that just right feel. Bill?
Liberty, I'm just wondering, it seems like from what I'm hearing that this is basically what we used to call paste up and export kinds of an environment. It's not really there to create content. Like, you're not going to edit a documentary inside Canva. It's not designed for that. It's to take material you already have, aggregate them together into an environment, and then export that off into all these other possibilities, the web and everything else. Is that generally correct?
You know what? That's a great way to put that. Like, yes, I'm sure that there's a Gen Zer out there or someone who spends a lot of time in Canva that, yes, they could create a documentary in Canva, but yes, your ability to, and you only have so much space as well. So the pro account, you have 1 terabyte of storage. So, again, nope, that's your Final Cut, your Adobe Premiere. But if you have more short form content, yes, go ahead, uploading those elements and or using their stock video elements to create the look and feel or tell the story that you are trying to do with the graphics and the video that you have at your fingertips. So that is, that's a really great way to put that. And I'm seeing that, Paul, in the comments. I was thinking of more similar level tools, not the high-end tools. So Canva is leading in their space of this cloud drag and drop tool, I would say, Paul. But as was shared a little bit earlier, your ability to just quickly either pull from a template or have, when changes happen, Instagram is always changing. Okay, we're going to prioritize this video size or this version, that they already adjust that very quickly. And if you have a design that has, certain specifications, you, with one click of a button, can have it, automatically resize for that and make whatever adjustments to the design so that it now fits that aspect ratio. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas says, do all members of a Canva team have the same administrative and access rights to the app? And is it possible to share the $120 a year cost among team members?
So each team member would be an additional license. So you are not necessarily sharing that team's cost. It is, and I do remember looking that up on pricing wise. And sorry, Paul, just for a moment there. So there are different tiers of team as well. So it's going to be more than 120, but there is licensing. Like any other platform, there's licensing with the more team members that you add. Oh, and sorry. And then your question to the administrative rights, that you can say, what they can view, what they can't view. There's only like 2 or 3 different access levels for them. Next question.
Morgan Price in Victoria, British Columbia, up next. For creating still graphics, for example, thumbnails for presentations, how does Canva compare to Adobe's Figma?
Oh, you know what? Jeffrey had mentioned earlier of just what works, how Canva does a really great job of that. While I've spoken a lot about templates, you do have canvases, like a blank canvas that you can create your own graphics. I have not worked too much with Figma. I do have a lot of design friends and projects we've worked on where the designer has built out things in Figma. And from what I know, just from those, handful of experiences, that the Figma is much more closer to Adobe, hence them also be the acquisition there. But yes, Figma being much more closer to Adobe than Canva, really being like, we've built this out and you can make these adjustments. But both platforms, like especially since you're talking about creating thumbnails, will work equally as well. Next question.
Morgan Price in Victoria, British Columbia, up next. How can you create personal templates? Can you export those for others to use in Canva or in other apps?
Rereading this again. So how can you create personal templates? Well, creating the template is really, once you have used the canvas and you make the design, that then it then becomes that template, and you can share that template, share that project with others so that they can, and you just have to put restrictions that that they can save it, but then they would have to add it to their Canva account to be able to make it editable. So that you can save the integrity of your design and not have people, because that's a mistake that people make. A lot of people who are in the digital product space and or selling e-course books or what, along those lines, that they'll create it in Canva, share that link so that you can then save it or copy it. So that's the same idea template wise. And then you can make the edits and adjustments there, but you just want to be very mindful when you do that so that you don't give them the original version and then they go ahead and they make edits to your design. Bill?
I just wondered, how does it handle things like fonts? And you noted earlier that you can install a font in Canva, do some work in it. if you send that template to somebody else, do they also need to secure and do you need to send them the fonts with it, or does it somehow embed that in the work that passes along?
I would have to get back to you on that because we've not had to do that. I know there's a brand portion of Canva where you can put and upload all of your assets. I don't know that if teams should share that. I don't know if sending it elsewhere. So I have to come back and do a little bit more, research to see that portion of it so that I can give a qualified answer there.
Fair enough.
Next question.
Moving on, Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas comes back in. Office Hours is a school in a sense. Can we become a school officially for real, not just get discounts on Canva, Apple products, and so forth?
That is definitely an Alex Lindsay question. I know that, well, it is a nonprofit. School-wise, we shall see. Seeing Alex come in there.
No. it's the amount of red tape to become an actual EDU is too high. We would never go through that trouble. Well, never is a big word, but not anytime soon.
There you have it, Paul. Next question.
Yeah. Megan Douglas from Fredericton, Canada says, I understand that the new features include a page/text feature closer to Word or Pages so that you're not having to use both Canva and a word processor, for example, Word, the software, I guess, to produce a handout for a class. How do you use it?
Great question, Morgan. I have not tried and if I understand that correctly, you're probably referring to the suite that they said, like the Canva suite during that at Canva, but that will be another one that I can do some research on, and I'll post that in Discord of how to create the templates to be able to have that word feature. Next question.
Next one comes from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas again. And Paul says, is there any limit to the number of members on a Canva team?
Let's double check and see if there are limits to that. Because I know that it said over 5+, I think it was. So give me one moment. Let me just quickly pull that up. Canva. Oops. All right. So Canva for Teams and pricing. So it says here that one, I don't see a limitation here according to their website, but I'm pretty sure that once you do, and even their customer service support would be able to give a more qualified answer there, because I don't see any limitations on the Teams feature. Next question.
Next one from Paul Wallace again in Austin, Texas. So a 10-member Canva team would be 10 times $120 or $1,200. And can there be a free team?
I'm not aware that there could be a free team because Canva is a business. So I really can't see there being a free team. But Paul, there is a customer support where it can further answer that question for you. Next question.
Paul Wallace again, this time, how do domains work in Canva? Once you publish a website, you'll find your domains in Canva?
So I watched the keynote. I haven't tested this out at all, just not having a need for using Canva websites yet, but you can create your website in Canva and then it can be hosted. If you think about it, much like GoDaddy has been doing for a number of years, is like you can buy the domain and you can actually use their platform to create a website and actually host your website. There is, from what I saw from the presentation, your ability to, if you create the website, to also host it, but going back and forth through name servers, etc. So that is from what I gathered that you are able to do from the presentation, to be able to create a website and either one, host it on Canva and or host it elsewhere on your own servers. It just, again, going back to the GoDaddy reference, that 72-hour time frame of what it needs to do to transfer the website elsewhere. Next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas says, can you show us via screen share a project, quote, close quote?
Oh, cool. Yes, I can. I kind of did that before. And since we do have some time and I know some questions will probably come up afterwards, give me one moment to pull something up that could be a good example. Let's do some social media stuff. I'll use my personal social here. And yeah, Canva and just that social media aspect of things. So you can see the questions that were shared earlier. It's like, okay, Canva, lower third, how does that? And that automatically comes up in the recent designs that I accessed to see some things. But if you follow me on Instagram, this will look very familiar to you. So I've got this color palette. So let me just pull this up here in grid view so you can just see like a lot of the design elements, and that this just helps me when it comes to planning certain posts that I'll do. Like these are for, Instagram carousels, or when I'll just have like one post. And I think this one is animated. So if I press play there, this actually wants to animate. It's going to animate like everything here, but that one post. And going back to someone who had shared earlier and just asking, let me just move that to the side for a second. So if I hit share, that's kind of like their export feature. So I can then tell it, okay, I want to download this as an MP4. And what you want to, and here are the list of all the other elements that other ways that I can export it. A quick note. So if you use LinkedIn, and sometimes you'll see people that have I forgot what the LinkedIn name is for it, but it's like they have like slides within their LinkedIn post. So it's not just images, but it's a slide. This is where sometimes what I'll do, if I know that I had a really good like Instagram carousel, I'll just go back in and I'll export it as, that says for print. I'll just export this PDF, and I'm just going to, what you want to be careful of is that you're not just going to export, because it will export everything in this particular project. I want it to export maybe pages 7 to 18. And then see, it's already selected those pages, hit done, and then it will export. So yeah, just looking at those exporting features there. If I want to say, even in changing the animation here, here, as I shared before, just going through and like it gives me those examples of the animation. If I wanted to add music, there is, going back to, there's all those crowns that you want to just be very mindful. If you're on the free account, that will be highly annoying. But if I drag this, I don't want to do it now because I have a feeling it will blow out the sound in the meeting. But if I just drag this on, then what will happen up here, it'll give me a toolbar where I can crop the sound and then say, adjusting here the timing that, hey, you know what? I want this video to play for 10 seconds. I make the adjustment. And then now we've got this video, when I export, will export as a 10-second video, and it will fade exactly as needed. Oh, you know what? I do want to go back and share, if I can find a video that, okay. So we have the kid stuff that we do for Chosen Media Kids. So just even looking at something like this, that I had someone on the team, they put this design together. And when we export it, we're exporting it as a video so that it plays out, thinking like each page in Canva now has become almost like it's putting this video together for us. And let's see. And I think hopefully that that answers the question there, Paul, for you, of like just looking at what a project looks like. And I can, easily move these things around. If it's like, oh no, we want it to be here. You can add comments like, see, here's that notes feature, Tony, as I said to you before, of if you're collaborating and working with someone, that you can then go in and have those elements, making those notes so other people can also see them. And there was something else someone had shared before that I said, here's even the access, like who's going to be able to access this project. You'll see the people on the team there. And I'll stop because that was a lot of talking there. All righty, next question.
Douglas Carmichael up next with, what is the advantage of Canva compared to a desktop design software?
I'd say that the big advantage to Canva is really just the ease of use, that someone could hopefully, and if you're watching this replay or watching this live and you go try Canva, report back to us on if you were able to make that social media graphic or that quick video, or how you were able to integrate it. But being able to go in and you're not necessarily starting from scratch, like you could go and create a design within a matter of an hour, if not less. So I would say the ease of use versus having to learn how to use a specific program. And it's cloud-based. So anywhere that you are, as long as you have internet access. Also, what I did not share was then also Canva has that mobile app. And a lot of what we do, being able to do it on the fly of, we've put the designs together, but then we're out at an event and needing to quickly to add an end card or something, and not necessarily having to pull up a laptop and hard drive and whatnot, everything being in the cloud, to be able to quickly edit on the mobile device. It's just very user friendly. So that's what I would say with regards to Canva. Again, it will not replace the fine tuning that you can have in those desktop software. Next question.
Next question comes from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. I created an animated After Hours Presents Party Night free iced coffee compliments of Karl Asmussen just for fun. How do I share that? Have you let Karl know?
Right. Does Karl know that
Is Karl aware he has to provide coffee for everyone?
So how you can share that is going up into that share element that I showed before. And then it will say, are you sharing that link with anyone? Are you sharing it with specific people? Just like when you're using Google and you want to send the email address, and then it gives those people access to using Canva. So if you want to share that link with anyone, that I would, again, just lock it down, or however, like these people can only view, that is the way. So go up to share in the top right-hand corner and then share that out. And we'll be on the lookout for your link, Paul. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. After Hours community, Discord, he just says with question marks.
Discord? Sure. Or maybe in after hours, so that we can actually look at and see what you did, and maybe there'll be a live demo. So there it is, Paul.
So he's looking for a Canva community or a Discord community, or a Canva community on Discord for office
possibly.
Hours. Is that what's going on?
Possibly. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, can you export Canva projects to desktop design software?
I'm not aware that you can do that, because all those export features are as is. So if I go ahead and I export the PNG, that's it. So there's not necessarily a working file that you can then share from that perspective. Now, again, just the workarounds of, okay, do you want to export certain elements and then have that, that person who can, whatever the desktop tool that you're using, that would be a little bit more work. But yeah, I would not recommend that. And again, no, that I'm not aware of that a Canva project can be exported, because it is cloud-based. Bill?
I was just wondering, so there's no Canva equivalent to XML that will take that out and give you, so you have to just individual elements and rebuild it in something else. That makes sense.
Yeah. And that can work if you are thinking about, if you've done something in Canva and you really like it, but now you want to give it to a motion graphics artist to do something a little more, customized, then there is that way of doing it. Again, a little bit more work, but it is possible. Next question.
And Douglas Carmichael up. Can you use Canva on mobile browsers?
Yes, you definitely can. I could have hooked that up to just even show you like what Canva looks like on my mobile device. A lot of, and I might come back to this after if we have a couple other, if there's time for that, but again, going back to like that Reels idea of, when you're watching, if you're watching Reels and you see the fonts that do not look like the 7 Instagram fonts use, that's where because we're trying to, make sure the client stands out. So we will go into Canva, find something that is really sleek or whatever that makes sense for their brand, and then export that as a PNG, pull it into the Instagram editor or pull it into TikTok, and then overlay that on top of the video created there so that you have just that extra pop. So that, and being able to just do that on your mobile device because you're already, Instagram and TikTok are mobile tools. Bill?
So it's exclusively a web service. So you'd use it on your mobile phone via the web service. There's no Canva iOS app or anything like that.
There is an app.
There is. Okay,
yes.
Good.
Yeah. Yes, there is an app.
Okay. Well,
Next
that'd be
question.
actually a more direct way to handle it. Yeah. All right.
Yes.
Megan Douglas in Fredericton, Canada is back again, this time with, can you upload audio in the same way you add your own pics?
Yes. I felt very Jason Bache there. Yes. Yes, you can.
Yes.
Yes, you can.
Question.
Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. Could Canva lend itself to collaboratively designing diagrams of setups for shows?
Yes. Yeah. And that was one of their announcements was just even their whiteboarding feature. So there are elements where you can, just design wise that you can. So yes, Douglas, the answer is yes. Bill?
Is there a thing like, I know that OmniGraffle for Grappletopia has people who have contributed their graphics design for things like show layout and lighting and stuff like that. Is there any Canvatopia where you can go get things, or do you have to do them yourself mostly?
Yeah, I would say that you would have to be creative in doing that. So they do have like when I first started, and that arrow when I like pulled the arrow and whatnot. So you do have those elements that will have connectors, but to that level, no. But you can be creative in putting the show plans together. Next question.
Jack Cannon, Phoenix, Arizona. Does anyone know if you create a logo in Canva, would there be issues with getting a trademark and or copyright for said logo?
That sounds like that sounds like a legal, something that you probably want to ask a lawyer. However, on the front end of that, there are in their terms of service. So if you are you can create something original in Canva and then having that as your logo. But if there's somewhere in there, this is like this fine line of using the design in Canva to then use that as your logo, if that makes sense. So pulling some elements to create something unique. Again, that's where you want to talk to your lawyer, but you cannot take a Canva template and then have that and export that as your design. So that's a part of their terms of service. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. Thank you, Liberty. Just added the Mac version during our conversation today.
Wonderful. See, this is why, because I know that while Canva is not necessarily, if you've been in the design space for a long time, Canva's like, the redheaded stepchild. But for those who are just getting into from a tech perspective or even designing, that you can learn a lot from Canva. You can do a lot from Canva and then grow from there. And again, it's one of those tools. It's a collaborative tool so that you can, hand off certain elements of your workflow to others on the team so that you'll be able to create and communicate, and part of the storytelling of your project, of your community, your brand. So that's where Canva really, really shines. And I think that was our last question for the day. Was that not, Bill?
It is, and you're right. You're really close. So if we actually might get out totally on time today, even with the credit roll. That's amazing. Good job.
There it is. And thank you so much, everyone in the community. I do want to pop it in Ike Potter's comment, because I was trying to remember John Barker's tool. So he said, I would prefer tools like here to record gear for that purpose. The question that had talked about designing for show. So yes, Canva cannot compare in that light. But if you something small and you just need to like map things out, yes, Canva can be very helpful there. So again, to our producers, thank you so much I saw the chat going and I was multitasking, trying to pull in a lot of your comments, but great questions. To our panelists, thank you so much, as always, for sharing your insights and knowledge with our community. And to our back end team, thank you. We had a lot of screen sharing today, so thank you for making all of us look so good. And if you want to learn more about what we do here, head over to officehours.global and have a wonderful day, all. And then we get to whisper, I think.
We do, but we usually wait for the credits, but now we're just going to whisper without the credits because we're credits.
This is the special black on black credits.
Yeah.
Coming to you from a coal mine.
They're going really fast.
Thank you so much for having this Canva conversation. It was very helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. They switched back to the old ones, not without the black text. Those ones went by really fast. It was just a test. Now we're using the regular ones. Well, I survived, although my monitors went a little crazy in the middle of the second hour. I hit a button and it just disappeared.
That's what I was concerned with. I was like, oh no.
My sister was watching yesterday and she said you had some technical glitches.
Some internet stuff, and then I got angry. And I tore apart the entire desk and put it back together. I was like, oh, this will only take an hour or two. It's like 6 hours later, I was all covered in sweat and pulling things around.
We both had a frustrating day. I went to the Spectrum store to try to get my phone totally switched over, and it was not pretty.
Yeah.
Alex, thank you for sharing all of the